On a peaceful morning in 2012 in Haikou, Hainan Province, China, the tranquility was shattered by news of the mysterious disappearance of a yoga instructor, a familiar face at the local fitness center who had vanished without a trace since November 19th. The missing woman, Liu Mei Lan, 31 years old, was originally from Yueyang, Hunan Province, but had been living in Haikou for 13 years. Before her disappearance, she worked as a yoga instructor. She was in a relationship with a man named Hao, whom she had known for 10 years. At the time, Hao was married with children, so their relationship had always been kept secret. To be with her long-term, Hao hired Mei Lan as an assistant at his company, putting her in charge of managing apartment rentals. In exchange, she received a salary and was provided an apartment in the same complex. Hao had a key to the apartment and could enter at any time. However, on the afternoon of November 19th, Hu discovered that he could no longer contact Mei Lan. Her phone was always off. For the past 10 years, whenever Hao called Mei Lan, she answered immediately. It was highly unusual for her phone to be off in the middle of the day like this. Haikou is not a large city, so Hu drove to Mei Lan's apartment to check on her. Upon arrival, he noticed her car was parked in its usual spot. However, when he knocked on the door, there was no answer. Using his key, he unlocked the door. The apartment was neat and tidy as usual, with Mei Lan's laptop, wallet, phone, and car keys all left behind, as if she had just stepped out for a moment. At this point, Hu considered waiting inside the apartment, but when he entered the bedroom, he felt that something was off. All the bedding in the guest room was gone. He immediately thought about reporting her missing to the police, but hesitated, as their secret relationship could lead to not just family disputes, but possibly a divorce if his wife found out. After 5 days of anxious waiting without any news of Mei Lan, Hu finally decided to file a missing person report. When the police arrived at the scene, they found no signs of forced entry or any damage to the locks. The apartment was untouched, with no evidence of a struggle. However, it didn't seem as though Mei Lan had left of her own accord. So what had happened to make her leave so urgently without taking any important belongings? As investigators examined the scene, they became increasingly suspicious that this might have been a carefully staged crime scene. They strongly believed that Mei Lan had left under duress, possibly forced by someone. Though the apartment appeared peaceful and orderly, what secrets might be hidden beneath its surface? 10 days after Mei Lan's disappearance, on November 30th, her younger brother, Liu Jiachu, arrived from their hometown in Hunan and met with the police. He shared that he was very close with his sister, and they spoke on the phone weekly. Her sudden silence had deeply concerned him. Police took Jiachu to his sister's apartment, and with his keen awareness of her habits, Jiachu quickly noticed several odd details. The first thing that caught his attention was a pair of black lace underwear conspicuously left in the bathroom. He knew that his sister was extremely tidy, almost obsessive about cleanliness. She always washed her clothes immediately after wearing them, never leaving them out like that. Jiachu also pointed out another suspicious detail: the missing bedding in the guest room. This was particularly strange because the room had always been reserved for him when he visited, and it had always been made up with sheets. Finally, he noticed that his sister's beloved brown poodle was missing. Given the situation, the police determined that the likelihood of foul play was high. News of frequent police visits to Mei Lan's apartment quickly spread, creating an atmosphere of anxiety throughout the neighborhood. Meanwhile, with the authorization of their parents, Jiachu offered a reward of 100,000 yuan, about $15,700, for any information regarding his sister's whereabouts. Night after night, he carried over 100 missing person posters, tirelessly posting them around the city in hopes of finding his sister. Criminal investigators reanalyzed the case details. They hypothesized that Mei Lan might have just finished showering and heard a knock on the door. Upon opening it, she may have been abducted. The question remained, who could Liu Mei Lan trust enough to open the door without suspicion? Although Mei Lan's family was not particularly wealthy, they were incredibly close-knit. They were prepared to offer a reward of up to 100,000 yuan to find their daughter. Alongside Jiachu's relentless efforts to plaster missing posters across the city, the case quickly attracted media attention. The police now faced pressure from both the victim's family and the public, who were increasingly focused on the case. After ruling out robbery as a motive, the police shifted their investigation toward personal grudges or romantic disputes. They began looking into people who had close relationships with or conflicts with Mei Lan, hoping to find a crucial lead to solve the mystery. During interviews with Mei Lan's friends, family, and neighbors, the investigators discovered that her social life was quite complicated. While filtering through relationships, they noted that she was particularly close to several men. Among them, the most suspicious was the person who had reported her missing. Hu, a local resident of Hainan, 45 years old, and a successful businessman in Haikou, Hu ran several business ventures. He had been romantically involved with Mei Lan for 10 years, entrusted her with some business responsibilities, and even provided her housing. Could unresolved romantic or financial tensions have driven him to murder? Meanwhile, the police called the residential complex's security guards to inquire if they had seen anyone entering or leaving Mei Lan's apartment around the time of her disappearance. After thinking for a moment, one guard mentioned seeing a slightly overweight white man coming to the apartment. Police soon learned from Jiachu that Mei Lan had broken up with her boyfriend of nearly a year, 2 months earlier. The man's appearance and build matched the description given by the security guard. The police then tracked down this man, Peng Yu Long, referred to as Long. When the police found Long, he was very cooperative. He appeared shocked and worried upon learning that Mei Lan was missing. He also expressed disappointment over their breakup. Peng Yu Long, 24 years old, was from Wuhan, Hubei province, a former soldier now working in construction. He admitted that he had gone to Mei Lan's apartment on November 19th because she had called him, saying that their shared dog was sick and needed to be taken to the vet. Since Mei Lan was busy, she had asked Long to take the dog. He claimed that he had gone with a friend, also a former comrade named Shen Yi Sheng. However, coincidentally, the security cameras in the residential complex were broken, so it was impossible to determine the exact time Long had arrived and left. The police later visited the veterinary hospital, confirming that Long had indeed taken the dog for treatment on the afternoon of November 19th. Long further stated that after leaving the vet, he drove to Wenchang City for business negotiations, with Shen Yi Sheng accompanying him the entire time. The person they met in Wenchang could also vouch for him. Peng Yu Long's testimony seemed consistent and reasonable. The case once again hit a dead end. Ultimately, after a series of investigations and eliminations, the police narrowed their suspects down to Hao and Peng Yu Long. Initially, the police focused on Hao. Investigators analyzed that Hao and Mei Lan's business relationship could have led to financial disputes. After knowing each other for 10 years, and with both aging, Mei Lan likely wanted to settle down and start a family, asking Hao to divorce his wife. But Hao, already having a family, could not comply, inevitably leading to conflict. Additionally, through their investigation, police discovered that in the past 2 years, Hao had begun seeing other women. This indicated that his relationship with Mei Lan wasn't as stable as it appeared. Some kind of crisis had certainly arisen. Based on these factors, Hao even admitted that after Mei Lan's disappearance, he spent 5 days agonizing over whether to go to the police. Compared to Hao, Peng Yu Long seemed less suspicious. Though the two had only met through WeChat, they appeared to have a strong relationship. Preliminary investigation showed that Long had cared deeply for Liu Mei Lan. Knowing that she likes to cuddle a stuffed dog to feel less lonely, he bought her a real poodle resembling the toy. He often visited her apartment to feed the dog and took responsibility for taking it to the vet when it was sick. Based on these details, Peng Yu Long appeared to have no motive to harm Liu Mei Lan. However, the police couldn't shake the feeling that they had missed something during the investigation. Therefore, they brought Jiachu back to his sister's apartment once again, hoping for new insights. Upon careful inspection, Liu Jiachu confidently told the police that one of his sister's favorite pajamas was missing. From this, the police grew more convinced that the crime had been committed by someone who knew her. Given the timeline, Peng Yu Long was now the prime suspect, as he may have been the last person to see Mei Lan. Jiachu also added that his sister had broken up with Long, and their relationship had become strained. Furthermore, Mei Lan had undergone an abortion because of him. At this point, investigators began to reconsider Long's motives. They reviewed the initial investigation and recalled that Long had answered questions fluently, with stable emotions, as if he had rehearsed. Therefore, the police summoned Peng Yu Long again. Simultaneously, they called in Shen Yi Sheng. They summoned Shen Yi Sheng as well for further questioning. When interrogating Peng Yu Long first, they noticed that his statement was almost identical to his previous one. Everything seemed too perfect, without any inconsistencies, which only heightened the police's suspicion of him. Next, they decided to shift their focus to Shen Yi Sheng, hoping to find a breakthrough in his testimony. During the interrogation, inconsistencies in their stories emerged. Previously, Long had claimed that he and Shen had gone to Mei Lan's residential complex together, but Shen stated that he hadn't been to the complex at all. Instead, he said that Long had come to see him around noon on November 19th, and afterward, they both went to Wenchang for the meeting. The police immediately checked security cameras at the complex where Shen lived. They found footage showing both Shen and Long entering and leaving the complex, but curiously, there was no footage of them using the elevator. After further review, they found a crucial piece of evidence. While meticulously watching the footage for over 2 hours, the investigators finally spotted the pair in the corner of the stairwell. They were seen carrying a black suitcase, and it was clear that the suitcase contained something heavy. Seeing this action on surveillance, the investigators all had the same chilling thought. The suitcase likely contained Liu Mei Lan's body. Peng Yu Long and Shen Yi Sheng were summoned once again to the police station. This time, both men seemed more nervous than before, particularly Shen Yi Sheng. Faced with the interrogation, it was clear that Peng Yu Long was struggling to maintain his composure. At this point, the police used a psychological tactic. They told Shen that Long had already confessed everything. As expected, Shen quickly broke down and admitted the truth. He told the police that Mei Lan had been killed by Long alone and that he had merely helped dispose of the body. According to Shen's testimony, police recreated the events of that day. On the evening of November 18, 2012, one day before the murder, Long had visited Shen. Peng Yu Long was in a somber mood that night, chain-smoking. After a long silence, he finally turned to Shen and said, "Brother, I need you to help me with something." As an old comrade and now Shen's boss, Shen naturally agreed, saying he would help in any way he could. However, he had no idea that Long's next words would make his legs nearly buckle. Long said, "Tomorrow, come with me on a little trip. Let's toughen your nerves with a murder." At first, Shen thought Long was joking, but when he saw Long's serious expression, he knew this was no joke. His first reaction was to refuse and try to talk Long out of it. But not only did his attempt to dissuade him fail, he soon found himself dragged into the situation. Long had subtly threatened him. On the morning of November 19, 2012, Shen went with Long to Mei Lan's residential complex. Long went upstairs alone, while Shen waited downstairs. About 40 minutes later, Shen received a call from Long, asking him to come up. Shen took the pre-prepared 28-inch black suitcase and went upstairs. When he opened the door, Shen cautiously stepped inside. Shortly after, he saw Mei Lan lying on the floor next to the sofa, as if she had fainted. Following Long's instructions, they taped her mouth shut, tied her hands and feet, and wrapped her body in bed sheets. Then they attempted to fit her into the suitcase. During the whole process, Shen's heart raced, and he was drenched in sweat. He had now become an accomplice to murder, with no way out. To avoid being caught, Long suggested they first take the suitcase to Shen's house. Long, likely due to his military training, seemed to possess certain skills for evading investigation. He had already anticipated the problem of security cameras. So after driving into the underground parking lot of Shen's apartment complex, they chose not to use the elevator. Instead, they struggled to carry the nearly 220-pound suitcase up the stairs. Unfortunately for them, they overlooked one crucial detail: the vital footage that the police had found in the stairwell. The next day, Long and Shen drove more than 300 miles to Wujishan. They avoided tourist areas and found a remote forest where they dug a hole and buried Liu Mei Lan. Confronted with Shen Yi Sheng's testimony, Peng Yu Long had no choice but to confess. Following their directions, the police traveled to Wujishan and successfully located the burial site, confirming the identity of the body as Liu Mei Lan. But what had transpired between Peng Yu Long and Liu Mei Lan during their relationship that made him go from love to hatred to the point of taking her life? The story begins when they first met. Liu Mei Lan had studied finance at Hainan University and stayed in Haikou after graduation. Initially, she worked as an accountant, but due to her free-spirited nature, she found the accounting job too monotonous and unpromising, so she quit after 6 months. She bounced between several companies, but her career wasn't very successful. Despite not making much money, she had a wide social circle, connecting with wealthy individuals like Hao through work. Her relationship with Hao wasn't exactly pure. He was much older, and though she was building her career alone in Hainan, Hao's influence and financial support helped her overcome many life obstacles. Over time, what began as gratitude grew into what she believed was true love. Hu, already married with a family, found himself increasingly drawn to the excitement of relationships outside his marriage. That's when he met Mei Lan, a young, vibrant college graduate brimming with hope for the future. To show his affection, Hao didn't hesitate to give her a car worth over 100,000 yuan, about $15,700. To the outside world, Mei Lan was just another employee at Ho's company, managing his real estate assets. But in reality, she was his kept woman, hidden away in a luxurious cage of secrecy. Their affair stretched on for a decade. Over time, as Liu Mei Lan's youth began to fade, she realized how much she had given to this relationship. She longed to be more than just the other woman and wanted to become Hu's official partner. However, Hao, distracted by younger women, began avoiding her and deflecting her requests for a commitment. During these stressful months, Liu Mei Lan discovered yoga. The practice brought positive changes to both her physical and emotional well-being. Seeing it as an opportunity to break away from her old life and her complicated relationship with Ho, Mei Lan decided to change careers. She studied diligently, earned a certification as a yoga instructor, and soon found a position at a prestigious fitness center in Haikou, opening a new chapter in her life. Mei Lan's newfound passion for yoga gave her a fresh perspective on life, helping her rediscover her vivacious spirit. Outside of work, she frequently socialized, but by the age of 31, she was eager to settle down and start a family. Peng Yu Long recalled that he and Mei Lan met in early 2012. At the time, WeChat had just launched, and it quickly became popular among young people. Mei Lan and Long were no exception, using features like nearby friend searches and the shake function to connect. One day, Mei Lan noticed someone named Sunny Boy in the nearby friend list who had listed former soldier in his profile. Intrigued, she sent him a friend request. Sunny Boy was none other than Peng Yu Long. He accepted the request after seeing Mei Lan's attractive profile picture. Once they became friends, they started chatting every day and quickly grew close. Peng Yu Long had a knack for flirting. Although they were still just friends at the time, he began using a romantic approach, greeting her every morning, wishing her good night, reminding her to eat, and commenting on the weather in a caring manner. Mei Lan was drawn to Long's communication style. She appreciated his meticulous and romantic gestures. Soon, they decided to meet in person, transitioning from an online friendship to real life. Their first meeting was a love-at-first-sight experience for both of them. Mei Lan's radiant beauty and charming figure captivated Long, while his politeness and thoughtfulness left a deep impression on her. However, during their conversation, Mei Lan learned that Long was 7 years younger than her, which left her feeling slightly disappointed. She thought the age gap might prevent their relationship from going further. But Peng Yu Long, adept at reading people, immediately reassured her that he didn't care about the age difference and expressed his feelings for her. As a result, the two quickly became a couple. Long gifted Mei Lan a poodle and even added funds to her new bank card. Just over 2 months later, they started living together. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Mei Lan, who had always dreamed of marriage and family, began to believe that this relationship, despite the 7-year age gap, could have a happy ending. At one point, Mei Lan suggested that Long visit her hometown to meet her parents and younger brother, but he declined. Liu Mei Lan didn't take it personally. In fact, she was understanding of his feelings, reasoning that at only 24 years old, Long might feel psychological pressure about such a big step. Then, in the summer of 2012, Mei Lan discovered she was pregnant. When she happily shared the news with Long, he hesitated for a moment, then suddenly dropped to his knees. Long confessed that he had been deceiving her. He admitted that he was already married in his hometown and had a 1-year-old daughter. However, he quickly tried to explain, saying that the marriage had been arranged by his family and that he had no feelings for his wife. He promised to return to his hometown the next day to file for divorce and begged Mei Lan to wait for him. But once Long left, Mei Lan was left alone, feeling heartbroken. She realized she had been deceived again, once more finding herself in the role of the other woman. Despite Long's apparent determination to divorce, Mei Lan couldn't help but feel devastated. As she wrestled with her emotions, she tried calling Long, only to find that his phone was turned off. Her heart sank. She called repeatedly over the following days, but still received no response. Mei Lan concluded that Peng Yu Long had disappeared on her. Overcome with despair, she finally broke down in tears. After calming down, Mei Lan came to her senses. She understood that this relationship was doomed from the start. She made the painful decision to go to the hospital alone and have an abortion, choosing to move on with her life. Weeks later, Long called Mei Lan again, but this time she ignored him. Time passed and she refused to engage with him, letting months go by. In early November, Peng Yu Long eventually showed up at Mei Lan's apartment, knocking on the door for a long time before she answered. He enthusiastically told her that he had finalized the divorce, explaining that his absence and inability to answer her calls were due to conflicts with his parents, who had confiscated his phone during their argument over the divorce. Despite his explanations, Mei Lan remained cold and distant. She calmly walked into her room, returning with a box of neatly packed belongings. Handing it to Long, she said, "I've already had the baby terminated. Let's part ways peacefully." Upon hearing this, Long's face suddenly darkened. He had thought Mei Lan's earlier messages about breaking up were just out of anger, so he continued trying to explain and beg for her forgiveness. But Mei Lan delivered an even more painful blow. "I've met someone else. We can't get back together." With that, she firmly pushed him out of her apartment and shut the door. After leaving, Peng Yu Long was filled with anger and frustration. He had already divorced his wife back home, only to be dismissed so decisively by Mei Lan. To him, it felt like she had been toying with his emotions. Moreover, how could she have moved on so quickly with someone new? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, pounding his chest in frustration. Perhaps at that moment, the thought of killing Mei Lan crossed his mind. As fate would have it, a few days later, Mei Lan called him. She mentioned that the poodle they had raised together was sick and needed to be taken to the vet, but due to her busy schedule, she asked Long to help. He agreed quickly, but his mind was already scheming. That night, he met up with his old comrade Shen Yi Sheng and shared his plan to toughen Shen's nerves by helping him kill someone. On the morning of November 19th, Peng Yu Long arrived at Mei Lan's apartment as planned. When she opened the door, Mei Lan had just finished showering and was fresh out of the bathroom. Perhaps due to the time that had passed since they last met, their attitudes toward each other had softened. Upon seeing Mei Lan's calm demeanor, Long felt an old spark of affection reignite. He pleaded with her to take him back, but Mei Lan was firm in her decision. They began arguing once again. Long grew increasingly agitated, insisting that he had divorced and didn't understand why she wouldn't forgive him. Mei Lan called him a liar, saying she would never trust him again and that her current boyfriend treated her much better. Those words seemed to have awakened something inside Long. In a fit of rage, he slapped Mei Lan hard across the face. Shocked, she threatened to call the police and turned to retrieve her phone. At that moment, Long lunged at her, pinning her to the ground, and began strangling her. Mei Lan struggled violently, kicking out in desperation, until she eventually stopped breathing. Faced with the police's questions, Peng Yu Long continued to evade responsibility, claiming that Mei Lan might have still been alive when she fell to the floor, and that he had only put her in the suitcase out of fear. However, this excuse was flimsy at best. The true tragedy of this case stemmed from Long's extreme personality. When he had returned to his hometown to ask for a divorce from his former wife, she had refused. After all, they had a young child together. But Peng Yu Long was not someone easily deterred once he had made up his mind. He had even resorted to physical violence against his wife. It's clear that Long had already caused deep harm to one woman and ended up taking the life of another. In August 2013, the Intermediate People's Court of Haikou, Hainan Province, held a public trial for this case. Peng Yu Long was sentenced to death, and the sentence was carried out immediately. Shen Yi Sheng, his accomplice, was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve and had his political rights revoked for life. Additionally, the court ordered both men to pay 94,000 yuan, approximately $14,700, in compensation to Liu Mei Lan's family. But no amount of compensation could ever bring back the life of Liu Mei Lan. The biggest takeaway from tragic cases like this is the importance of online safety when forming relationships. While there are success stories of people meeting online, the complex world of the internet holds many risks. And that's the story for today. Thank you all for watching, and see you in the next video.